Hey, what's up guys? Clint here. And in this video, we're going to be building a chat application. So we're going to be utilizing React.js for the front end, and for the back end, we're going to be using Firebase. So if you're new to React or if you're just learning Firebase, this is going to be a perfect video for you because I'm going to walk you through how to do everything from the complete beginning. So we're going to build this thing from scratch. So let's have a look at what we're going to be building here, and then we'll just jump right into the code. So we're going to have a lot of really cool features. So we're going to allow users to be authenticated and like sign in with their own Gmail account. And it's pretty cool because Firebase is going to handle all of that for us on the back end. And it's really easy to incorporate. So as you can see here on the right browser over here, I'm already signed in and I already had a message sent, and I can go ahead and say, I'm learning Firebase 2. Then on this left side, what I'm gonna do is going to sign in with a different Google account, and it already has me signed in here. So as you can see, the messages that are sent, I'm going to show you how we can kind of configure this thing. So to render out the messages on the right if they're sent, and if they're received, we're going to have them on the left hand side. So that's what we say here. That's so awesome. There we go. And you can see how the messages are laid out on different sides. So if you want to see how I built this from scratch using React.js and Firebase, then let's get started. All right, guys, so here I am in VS Code, just a blank code editor, and I'm already in the working directory that I'm going to be in. It's just chat app -YouTube for my directory here. And what I'm going to do is just open up the terminal here with the control backtick button, and let's go ahead and create our React application. So let's say npx create -react -app. And what I want to do is just go ahead and install it in the current directory here. All right, you guys, says happy hacking. That means we're ready to go. So I'm just going to shrink this over here down just a tad there, so you guys have a little more room to see. And what we're going to do, we're going to style this thing with Tailwind. So I'm just going to go ahead and install Tailwind. So let's go ahead and do that first. This is going to be real quick. You can skip through this if you don't want to use Tailwind, or if you already have it installed, or if you're familiar with it. But I'm going to go ahead and install Tailwind. So I'm just going to copy this line over since I'm using NPM. So let's go ahead and just paste that in there. Next, we're going to want to run this npx command, tailwind init-p. That's going to create this tailwind.config file. So I'm going to go ahead and that's important because this next line here, we're going to paste that inside that content array. So if you haven't used Tailwind, you guys, by the way, it is awesome. If this is your first time, you're going to love it. I mean, you save so much time when you're developing here. So then this next step, this is the final step. You just have to copy this here inside into your index.css over here in your source folder. So what we'll do is just copy this in our source folder, and that's all we need to do there. So we can go ahead and close Tailwind. Now, what I want to do next is kind of clean up some files. There's a lot of stuff here in this source folder that can get kind of confusing, especially if you're new. So this app.test, let's go ahead and select that, and then the logo.svg, the report web vitals, and also the setup test. And you know what, let's get rid of this app.css too. So it's kind of the minimalistic approach. I think it's going to be a lot easier to follow along. So let's just go ahead and get rid of all of those. That's going to leave us with the app.js, the index.js, and the index.css. Okay. So once we're in there, that looks good. Let's go into our app.js file here. And let's just go ahead and start our server with npm start. I had a lot of fun building this, you guys. It's really cool. So we're going to go ahead and start this. It should be up on 3001. On your machine, it's probably going to be 3000. So I still have my demo open here. We're going to get some errors if we don't delete all this here. So let's go ahead and delete that header tag. And then this class name, we can remove that since we're going to be using Tailwind. Then here, we'll just import React from React, just like that, okay? So yeah, let's go to index.js. We just need to get rid of this as well. And this will clear off some of our errors there. So everything's looking good. So what I want to do first is actually kind of go ahead and kind of just build out the elements of our chat app. So like all the HTML part. So let's go ahead and start with this navbar here. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we're going to have here, or before we even do that, since we're going to be using Tailwind, let's go ahead and in our app component, we're going to build out the container. Okay, so what we're going to say, and I'm going to extract all my Tailwind, but I'm going to show you, I'm going to do this first so it's a little bit easier to follow along. So let's go ahead and add a class name here. And for our class name, this is just to be the app container. So I'm just going to say, let's say app. Well, let's do this. So what I'm going to say, instead of, or here, let's go ahead and do this here. So what I want to say is max width, and I'll show you what I mean here in a minute. So 728 pixels is the max width. I'm going to say MX auto for margin auto on the x-axis. Then I'm going to say text center here. So then for this next line here, we're going to have a section here. So I'm going to say section, just like that. Close this off. And inside here is where our actual chat component is going to live in there. But for the section, let's give this a class name, just like so. And this, we're going to say flex. We want things to display flex column. And the height, I'm going to say 90 viewport heights. And if we use brackets, this isn't really like a deep dive into Tailwind in this tutorial. But basically, if you're new to Tailwind, or if you're familiar with Tailwind, you can do the height. You say h dash a value, h dash screen. But if you want to add in a custom value, you can just use some brackets just like that, which is pretty cool. And I'm just going to say 90 VH, and not just for sizing, but you can do it for colors and any values in Tailwind. So pretty cool. So we're going to say background gray 100, MT10 for a margin top of 10. I'm going to say shadow dash XL. Let's give us a little box shadow border. And then I want this to display as relative. So we're going to position some things as absolute or fixed inside this tag here. So that looks good right there. I'm going to go ahead and save it. Now, what I meant by kind of extracting the Tailwind, this can get kind of messy. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to put my Tailwind styles just above our component. And the way we can do that here is I'm going to say const style, just like that, equals, then we're going to put this in some curly brackets here. And for this top one, I'm just going to copy in my styles here, okay? And this works very similar to like how you would a typical CSS file. So what I can say, I'm just going to say app container, just like that. And you can say whatever you want. And then we're going to have a colon with some backticks, okay? Then in our backticks, we're just going to paste in our styles, just like that. Then I can just replace this right here with some curly brackets. And I'll just say style dot app container, just like that. And then all the styles will be active. You can already see some changes here on the right. So let's go ahead and do that for this section as well. And this is what I'm going to do for the remainder of the tutorial here. But I just wanted to show you kind of how things work and how you can extract your Tailwind. So this one I'll say style dot, and this one I'm going to say section container, just like that. And then up here it's very important. So you got to use backticks. You often have to separate each line with a comma. If you don't, you're going to get some errors here. So I'll say section container, just like that, add our backticks and paste that in. So now you can see we're having a little shadow in here as well if we open that up. So there's our chat box right there. Everything's looking good. Perfect. Now, before we move on, inside this section here is where we'll have a navbar, and we're going to have our chat component, just like that. Okay, so let's do our navbar next. Okay, so go ahead, and I'm toggling the side menu, guys, with Command B. So if you're wondering how I'm toggling that, it's the Command B is what I'm using. So let's go ahead and create a components folder inside of our source folder. Okay, and this is where all of our components are going to live. So components here, and then a new file, and this is just going to be navbar.jsx. So .js or .jsx doesn't really matter. If we use .jsx, we're going to have commands where we can use our JSX in here. So I'm going to say refce to generate our functional component here on the over here. Then let's go ahead and import our navbar here. So navbar, just like that, and we'll import navbar from components / navbar, just like that. So now you can see our navbar is indeed imported here on the right. Move that over a bit. There we go. So once our navbar in here, let's go into our navbar. And what we're going to do is we're going to be pretty simple. So inside on the top of our navbar, we're going to have a sign out and a sign in, but let's go ahead and kind of build that out here. So for our navbar here, and what I'm going to do now, since we already I showed you how we did the styles, so I'm just going to type it out like this, and I think this will be a lot easier to follow along. So for our navbar, I'm just going to say style.nav, just like that. And then inside here, we're going to have a heading. Let's say H1. I'm going to give this a class name. It's going to be equal to style.heading, just like that. Cool. Close our H1, just like that. And inside here, I'm just going to say chat app, just like that. Cool. So let's go ahead and save that. And those errors we're getting, that's cool. We just need to add in the styles here. So I'm going to say const style, just like we did on the app container. And inside here, I'm going to say nav. And I'm just going to copy over my styling, you guys, so kind of keep the length of this video short. So feel free to pause it and just kind of copy in the styling I'm using. So what we're doing, background gray 800, so you can see this nice dark background. H20 is the height. And you guys, Tailwind goes by multiples of 4. So 4, if I were to say H4, that would be 1 rem. And so we're using like 5 rem right here. So that's how that's working there. Then flex, justify between item center, so everything kind of sits in the middle of the nav bar. And then we're going to do our heading next. So Let's do our heading here. So don't forget, we have to add a comma here at the end. And then here, I'm just going to say heading. We got to put this in backticks, you guys remember, very important. So text white, then 3XL, just like that. So everything is looking good there, you guys. So next, I think we should go ahead and probably just go ahead and install Firebase. So we can go ahead and jump into getting our authentication configured, and we'll go ahead and do that right now. So let's go over to Firebase here. I'm going to open up a new window. And what I'm going to say is, see, firebase.google.com. So you do need a Google account, but this is 100% free. You don't have to sign up for anything or anything like that. So we're going to go to the go-to console. And so this is my application right here, but I'm going to create a brand new one for you guys so you can just follow along step by step. So we're going to click on add new project, and here you can just add your project. So I'm going to say chat app YT for YouTube here, and I'm going to turn off this Google Analytics. You don't really need it in here. Just extra fluff that you don't need to use when you're just learning Firebase. I like to simplify things as much as possible, especially when I'm just learning. So this is creating our database, and it's quite quick. It looks like it's just about done. Check out that cup you guys got. Awesome, right? Got some espresso in there. Power through the build. So, okay, so once we're in here, we've created our project here. What we need to do is kind of connect it to our application here. So we're going to click that little web button right there. Then it just wants another name here. So I'm going to say chat, YouTube, just like that. You can use the same name if you want to. You don't need to do the hosting right now. You know, I set it up later if you do want to deploy this thing. So what we need to do next is actually install Firebase and install the Firebase package here. So let's just copy that here, and I'm just going to close my my application down right there. So I'm just clear this out. So let's go ahead and paste that in to install Firebase. And we're going to be using two other packages for this build. So we're going to use a React Firebase hooks package, and we're also going to use this. It's like a Google button package. Gets you that cool little button there. So you don't have to install it if you don't want to, but I'm going to do so in this one. But you do have to install Firebase and the hooks package for this to work. So we just installed Firebase. Now we need to install another package. So I'm going to say npm I or npm install, doesn't really matter. I'm going to say react-firebase-hooks, just like that. Go ahead and press enter, and that's going to install the React Firebase hooks package. Then this button that we're going to be using, go install this npm I, and it's going to be React Google button. There we go. So those are the only three packages we're going to be using. So Firebase, the Firebase hooks, and the Google button, which is optional. You don't have to use that one if you don't want to. So npm start is going to spin our development server back up. So next, what we need to do, we're on this right page here. So what we need to do is actually just copy this into a Firebase file. So I just copied that right there. So let's go back over to our application. And what we want to do is actually create a file called firebase.js. So now I'm going to create this inside of my source folder. So not the components folder, it's going inside our source folder. So I'm just going to say firebase.js, just like that. And not JSX, just JS. No, we're not going to have any JSX in here. So let's go ahead and paste that in there, like so. Perfect. Now, what we need to do, it says here, like add SDKs for the Firebase products we're going to use. And in this video, we're going to be using an Auth product and also their DB product, which is their Firestore. It's like a real-time cloud database. But don't worry, it's really easy to use. So what we're going to do next is let's go into build. And this, you guys, this is kind of just like the layout for Firebase. I'm going to zoom in for you guys. This is just the layout where you can kind of use all of the Firebase products here. So like I said, we're going to be using authentication here, and we're also going to be using this Firestore database. So let's go into authentication. And we're just going to click get started here. Okay. Now, these are all the different ways you can have users sign in with an email and password. You can see over here, Google, Facebook, GitHub. There's so many different ways. This is how powerful Firebase is, you guys. In this video, we're just going to use a Google. If you're interested in using GitHub or any of these others, I got some other videos on how you can authenticate using those services. But what we're going to do is click Google. Then we're going to click that enable here on the right. And you need to just select your Google email address. So this is one of my Google accounts I'm going to use. I'm just going to hit save. And what this is doing is kind of setting us up. So and that's really all we need to do on this side to log in with Google. Now we do need to actually add some code to our project, but it's very, very minimal. It's real easy. So what I'm going to say here is just go over to the docs here, and you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to show you where you can find some of their information. So I'm going to click on build, and in here is where we're looking at. So we're looking at authentication, and then I'm going to click on web, and it's just like I'm clicking on the get started here. And this is all we need to do. So we just need to import their package here for auth. So what we need to do is just copy that right there. I'm going to go and close down the rest of our documentation. I'm not going to be using it anymore for this video. So feel free to just follow along. But if you get stuck, leave a comment and I'll be happy to help, or, read the documentation. They have really good docs. So in here it says add SDKs for any of the Firebase products you want to use. So we're going to add the Get Auth software development kit here. And then we're also going to add the database one, but we'll do that here in just a minute. So what we need to do down here is actually, we're going to export this. So what we can say here is we're going to say export const, and it's going to be auth equal to, and this is just going to say get auth. Then we're going to put it in, wrap it in this, pass in the app right here. So these are my configuration keys here. So don't use mine. In fact, I'm going to put this on my GitHub, so feel free to clone this, but these keys will not be in there. So make sure you get your own. And really, you should probably put these in like a .env file. But you don't want these to be deployed out to the web. So make sure you wrap those in and put them in a .env file if you're going to be deploying your app. So now that we have that done, let's go back into our Navbar file here. And what we want to do is, or let's go and actually in our app.js files, what we're going to need to do first. So inside our app.js, we're going to import a couple things. So let's go and import auth, right? So we're importing auth from our Firebase file. So we'll say /Firebase, and this is literally what we're importing right here, what we're exporting here, the auth. That's what we're importing into our app.js right there. Now we're also going to use our hooks, right? Our Firebase hooks that we installed. So we're going to import, and this one's going to be use auth state, just like that. And this is going to be from React Firebase hooks /auth, just like that. Okay. And what we can do, we can actually check our auth state and see if a user is logged in or not. So what we're going to say down here, this is going to go inside of our app function here. And I'm just going to say const user is equal to, and then we're going to say use auth state. And then we can just say auth in here. So if we go ahead and console.log, the user should just be null here because nobody is logged in at this time. Yep, stuff. There we go. So let's just have a look here. So null says we are null because nobody's logged in, and we'll just keep this open because we'll check once we're logged in here. So let's just go ahead and comment that out for now. So now let's go into our Navbar component here. Okay. And inside our Navbar, we're also going to want to import the auth as well. So we'll import auth from Firebase, okay? And we're going to need to go outside this directory here. So we're going to put 2 dots because this is in our source directory, and the navbar is kind of buried into our components folder. So once we have that, we're also going to want the use auth state. So we're going to say use auth state, just like that, from, and this is just from the React-Firebase-hooks/auth, okay? Perfect. Now in here, let's go ahead and add in our const user, just like we did on the app. That's going to be equal to use auth state, passing in our auth here. Now let's go ahead and have a button here or create a sign-in component where we can actually sign in. We're going to handle all of our sign-in logic inside of our sign-in component. So inside of our components folder here, let's create another file, the signin.jsx, just like that. And inside of this sign-in folder, let's go ahead and says refce. And then inside here, we just want to import this. So we'll say sign in, just like that. We'll just add this here at the top. So import sign in from in, just like that. Perfect. And so next, what we want to do, oh, there we go. Should get rid of that app there. Should be having any errors. Refresh, everything's looking good. So inside of our sign in component, let's go ahead and kind of just build that out real quick. So it's gonna be pretty simple. So we're just gonna have this outer div here is just gonna be like a wrapper. So I'm gonna say style.wrapper, just like that. Then inside here, we actually have our Google button. So I'm just gonna say Google button, just like that there. And so we need to import a couple of things here. So let's import our Google button. So we'll say Google button, and this is going to be from, let's see, React-Google-button. And this is the React package that we just installed. So if you skipped over that part, just make sure you install npm React-Google-button. That's going to be that button we're going to use. So looks like it's throwing an error. We just need to give our style here. So const style, and then we're just going to say wrapper, just like that. And then for our wrapper, we're just gonna have flex and then justify center. So you can see we have our button here over here on the right, which is looking pretty cool. So pretty cool. We didn't have to configure this, but if you just want to do a regular button, then that's fine too. So so a couple things here. What we're going to write out now is actually our functionality to be able to sign in and authenticate using Firebase. So what we're going to do is just create a new function here, and you can actually call this whatever you want here. So I'm going to say const Google sign in, just like that. And this is just going to be an arrow function. You can call it whatever you want, you guys. There we go. But next we're going to say const provider, okay, equal to new. We're going to say Google auth provider, just like that, to be a function. Then here on the next line, we're going to say sign in with redirect. Now these are Firebase methods that we're going to be importing here in a minute, but this is literally how easy it is, just like that. We're just passing the provider. So that is looking good there. Const Google sign in, everything looks good. Looks like we're getting an error here. So const provider, oh, just forgot that there. Oops, you guys are probably roasting me for that one, sorry. So these are the errors we're getting here. So what we need to do is just import those. So let's go ahead and take care of that. And we'll do that right here. So we need to import our auth, right? So auth, this is just going to be from our Firebase file. So we have to go up 2 levels for that. Okay. So next, these are the methods that were actually being provided for from Firebase. So let's go ahead and import those. So we're going to import Google auth provider and sign in with redirect. Cool. And these are going to be from, whoops, these are going to be from Firebase /auth, just like that. Okay. So let's just go ahead and refresh there. Now, that's all we need to do. However, to get this working, we just have to add on click for this button here. So we'll say on click. Now, on click, we just want to run this function, right? The Google sign in, just like that. So now, if we go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and where we have this imported, let's just go ahead and console.log the user. It should say null right now. So once we click this button, if we did everything correctly, we should be able to sign in. So let's go ahead and click that. Ooh, looks like it's forwarded us to what we need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and sign in with my account. And hey, there you have it. So now we are signed in to our application. We're authenticated using our Gmail account. And if you look down here, it actually has a lot of information being provided to us from Firebase, and it's our Gmail account. So if I click on this, you can see my display name has my email address. It's verified. Even has my photo URL, which is actually, I don't have a URL set or a photo, so it's just the default little circle there. But that's how easy it is to be authenticated with Google. So, and if we go into our application here, if you look at users, it was a blank table before. Now you can see it actually has all of my information inside Google. So it just pulls it over automatically. So how awesome is that, you guys? Smash the like button if you feel like you're getting some value out of this. I'd very much appreciate that. So now that we're signed in, it would probably be a good idea to be able to sign out as well. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So let's go back to our Navbar here. And while we're in here, we're going to create a new component. I'm just going to call it logout.jsx. Okay. So RAFCE is going to get our functional component. And then let's just go ahead and I'm just going to put it right below the sign out. So I'm going to say logout. And what we're going to do is use some a ternary operator here to kind of display it here in just a moment. But right now, I just want to go ahead and build it out super quick. So whoops, import logout from, just like that. Okay, so now you can see it over here off to the right. There we go. So inside our logout, let's go ahead and build it out. It's gonna be real easy. What we're gonna say here, so let's give this a class name. There we go. And we're just gonna say style dot, what I call this here, just button. Okay, and we can just actually turn that into a button. It'll be easy like that. We'll say const style. Okay, and for our button, we'll say button, then use our backticks. Remember, I'm gonna say bg gray 200 px4, so it's just a little padding on the left and right of 1 rem, and then we'll say py of 2, so that's going to be 8 pixels on the top and bottom there, and then we're going to say hover bg gray 100 there, and nothing's in there, but that's cool. I'm just going to say log out, just like that, and now you can see we have our logout button. So what we do need to have is just our kind of hook up our functionality here. So we need to import the auth here at the top. So let's just import auth, and this is just going to be from Firebase, our Firebase file here. So we have to go down a couple directories. So that should be good there. Oop, left out a slash. Okay. Now for our function, and this is just going to be able to, our function that we're going to write now is just going to allow us to sign out of our application. So what we're going to say, I'm going to say const log out, or sorry, I'm going to call it sign out, because you can't name this the same as your component here. This actually needs to go inside of my functional component. There we go. So I'll say const, I'll just say sign out, just like that. It's going to be an arrow function here. Now in here, I'm just going to say sign out. I'm just going to pass in auth, just like that. Okay. So that is easy right there. And real quick, let's just go ahead and log out and make sure it works. Oh, forgot. Say on click. We'll pass in a function here. So inside here, we'll just say auth dot sign out, just like that. Okay. So we refresh, make sure we don't have any errors. So let's go ahead and try and sign out here. And this should, you see, null, and we are now signed out. Now, it doesn't really make any sense here to be displaying this this button if we're not actually signed in. So what we can do, let's just go over to our navbar here, and we'll just use a ternary operator here. What we'll say, I'll just do it right here. So I'll zoom in a little bit. So what we're going to say, if user, okay, and we're importing our user from here, right here, right? So we're saying if user is true, then that means we're logged in. So that means we want to just display our logout component. Else, if it's not logged in, if it's false, then we actually want to display the sign in component. So let's just go ahead and get rid of those. Now you can see we are we're not signed in, so we're displaying our signing with Google. And if we sign in with Google here, should show us now we're signed in. So we're displaying our logout button. So there we have it, you guys. We can authenticate, we can sign in and out with our Google account and displaying everything accordingly. So next, what we should do is actually create our chat component. I'm just going to go ahead and leave us logged in here. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Let's go ahead and close down some of these files here. We'll leave that Firebase open. But in here, let's go and create our chat component. So inside of our components folder, I'm going to create a file called chat.jsx. Okay. Now, and we're going to do some ternary operators as well for our chat component, because we don't want it to be rendered all the time as well. And we're going to have a few different components in here. So we're going to have our chat box, and then inside we're going to break it down to where each message is its own component, and then we're going to have the form as well. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So inside of our chat, our actual chat component here, I'm going to say RAFCE. It's just going to generate our functional component. And we're going to have all of our logic here for our kind of retrieving all our messages from the database in here. So for our chat here, let's give this a class name here. And this is going to be, let's just say style.main. It's actually going to be quite simple. And we can just change this div here to main. Look at us using this semantic HTML in there too. Nice, right? All right, so we'll say const style, and let's just pass in here our main. Remember, we got to use the backticks. And we'll say flex column, and then p-10. Sorry, since this is a custom value, we're going to use brackets here. So we'll say 10 pixels, just like that. And let's position this relative, because we're going to position some things absolute in here as well. So that's all we need to do there. Now let's go ahead and so what I want to do, let's actually wrap this here in just a fragment, just like that, because we're going to have a few things inside of here. So just select that, and let's just bump it up a bit in there. Cool, perfect. So I'm going to save that so it gets nice and formatted. So inside of our main here, this is where our chat message component is going to be here, just like that. Then underneath here, we're going to have a send message component, also known as, you know, we're going to be our input, our form here. And then we're going to have a span down here. Okay, we're going to have a, wish it was auto closing there. We're going to have a span down here, and I'm just going to say ref equal to scroll. And I'll kind of explain why we're doing that, but basically it's just adding a little CSS here. So if a message gets displayed at the bottom, then it's going to automatically scroll to the most current message. And also, you guys, I'm going to show you how we can actually order these messages by timestamp. So I'm going to show you how we can do that, all of that on Firebase here. So once we have that in, let's go ahead and import a few things from React here. So we're going to be using use state, also the use effect, and then we're also going to be using the use ref like we just did right there. So we're going to go ahead and hook up this ref here, and just like all the other, whenever you use ref, we're going to kind of define that up here. So I'm going to say const scroll equal to use ref, just like that. Okay, and then I'll show you where we're going to actually incorporate this here in another component. So let's go ahead and create our chat message component here. So let's go ahead and we're going to create this component inside of our components folder. So I'm going to say chat, I'm just saying message JSX, just like that, kind of make it easy. RAFCE. So let's go in here and we'll say, put this right here. So message, whoops, just like that. Let's import this, import message, message. Okay, it's good there, perfect. Now inside of our message here, what we want to do, it's going to be pretty easy. We're just going to build out the HTML first here. So we're going to have a div, then we're going to have another div, and this one is going to have a class name. So inside this, it's going to be style.message, okay? And we're going to actually do some pretty cool stuff inside this class name as well, so we can kind of toggle the sent and receive messages as well. So in here, we're going to have a p tag, and I'm just going to say, Dave, we're going to hard code this, because each message, as you can see, each message, we're actually going to be able to display the sender's or receiver's a name on top of it. So just to actually add a little bonus there that we're going to be able to do. So, and inside here, I'm going to give this a class name, just like that. And this one's going to be style.name. There we go. And then in here, it's going to be our p tag, and I'm going to say, I'm learning React. So this is going to be our actual message here that we're going to be able to see on the screen. So let's go ahead and add our styles here. So const style, just like that. And inside here, our first one's going to be message. So I'm going to say message, and I'm going to go ahead and just copy all of these in, you guys, just to make it easy. Feel free if you want to pause it, but make sure we have to add the comma at the end. And again, make sure that these are backticks. So we have our comma there. The next one's going to be name, just like that. And I'm going to go ahead and wrap this here. That's a little bit easier for you guys to see there. So those are the only two the styles that we're going to use here. But what I do want to show you is how we're going to actually toggle the sent and receive. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is just kind of paste in these two right here. But don't worry about it. It'll make sense here in just a minute. So you see I have the sent class here, then also a received here, just kind of referring to the sent and received messages. So I just realized that we didn't actually import our chat component. So let's go ahead and go back to our app.js, okay? And inside here, we're just going to import chat component. There we are. It's imported at the top. Import chat from components. Chat, just like that. Cool. So now you can actually see that we're having our message rendered out here on the screen. Now it is hard-coded. We're not actually pulling anything from our database. In fact, we haven't even configured our database. So I think that'd probably be, let's go ahead and do that right now. Then we'll come back to our chat component. We're going to have all of our logic in. So let's go back over to our Firebase here. I'm going to open this up a bit. I'm just going to toggle our sidebar here. So remember, let's go into our project overview here. So this is our authentication shortcut. We're going to go into build and then just click on Firestore database. And all we need to do is just kind of configure our database, then add just a little bit of code to get it ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and start in test mode. Basically, it gives us 30 days. If you want to start in production mode, you can. And this is just like a basic JavaScript syntax that you can alter, read, and writability. So we're going to start in test mode here. And it's going to default to just go to the closest cloud location for you. Go ahead and hit start. And this is going to configure our your database, but it's super fast, so don't worry about that. So next, once it configures our database, we're going to kind of go back over here while this runs in the background. And in Firebase, just like we imported the Auth SDK, we're going to also import the Firestore SDK. So we'll say import just like that. And then inside here, what we need to do, that's all we need to do right there. So get Firestore is what we're going to be using. So get Firestore, that's the name of the SDK that Firebase provides for us. We'll just say from Firebase. Now, instead of Auth, we're looking for Firestore. Now, perfect. Now, here at the bottom, we're going to do the same thing, const, and I'm just going to say db is equal to get Firestore, just like that. And then we're just going to pass in app. Now, we do need to export this, so we have access to this outside of this file, just like we did with the Auth. So you can go ahead and close that. We're done with that file there. And now we have our database. Let's go ahead and just start a collection. So the way database or Firebase works, and specifically, so it has a collection ID here. And this is started our collection. And then, so let's just say messages. You can call this whatever you like. So messages, then each collection is going to have a document, and the document is actually a specific file here. So what we can say is just auto-generate an ID there. So for this field, I'm going to say text, and I'm going to say I'm learning React, just like that. I'm going to add another field. We're going to have multiple fields, but for right now, I'm just going to add these two right here. And this one's just going to be timestamp, and that's just what I'm calling it. You can call it whatever you want, but here in the type, it actually has a type by the name of timestamp, just like that. And I'm just going to click the date that I'm making this right now, and time, cool, save. And as you can see, it's going to generate our file here. So let's go ahead and see how we can actually pull this from our database and display it on our front end here. So let's go back over here, and remember, this is hard coded right now inside of our message. Okay, so let's go back to our chat component, and here we're going to use a use effect to basically have a look at any changes, and every time there's any changes to our database, it's going to update in real time our component here. So we're going to put this just underneath our scroll here, and we're actually going to use some use state here, because we're going to store all this state, store the messages inside our state here. So excuse me, I'm going to say const in here. I'm going to say messages and set messages, just like that. And you can say whatever you like here, but I'm going to call it that. Use state. I'm actually going to set this to just an empty array. Just an empty array here by default. So next, what we're going to use is our use effect to basically every time our component reloads or our page reloads, or there's any change to our data in Firebase, it's going to update in real time and render out the data on our screen. So let's go ahead and use our use effect hook here. It's just going to be an arrow function that it takes in. And let's pass in our dependency array here at the bottom. Then inside here, it's really quite easy. We're going to give it like a query string here. So I'm going to say const q. We'll say query. And this is kind of telling our app where to look. So we're going to say, query. We're going to say collection there. And the collection is going to be our database. And then we're looking for our actual collection name, which is messages. And then what we're going to want to do is actually order everything by the timestamp that we just created. Otherwise, everything is going to be just out of order and not really make sense. So we'll say order by, just like that. And then we're just going to pass in timestamp string. And this is, just to be clear here, this is what we created right there. And that's what's going to order it by. And this is, by the way, you guys, this is a server-side timestamp. So it's not actually your time, it's the time on the server there. So what we're looking at here next is go ahead and say const, and we're going to say unsubscribe. Okay, that's going to be equal to on snap shot, just like that. And we're going to pass in the query string here. We'll say, this is just an arrow function. We're going to say query snapshot, just like that. And then what we're going to have in here, we want to set the messages, our messages state, just an empty array there by default. And then what we're going to say is query snapshot, just like that. And then we're going to say for each is we're gonna like loop through everything, gonna name everything, give everything the value item of doc. And then what we'll say in here, we'll say messages dot push. Okay, let's open up our parentheses here, and we're actually gonna pass this in. We're gonna say doc dot data. Okay, then in here we're just gonna say ID equal to doc dot ID. Okay, then just below here we can set our messages to messages. So we're setting our state here to our messages array in there, and then we just need to return was unsubscribed, just like that. So let's go ahead and save, and that should be everything we need to do. Now it's giving us some errors, and these are all the things that we need to import actually from Firebase. So let's just go ahead and do that here at the top. So what we're going to say is import, and this is going to be from Firebase / Firestore, just like that. And let's go ahead and wrap everything that we're going to be importing. Go. So what do we need here? We need the query, we need the collection, we need the DB, we need order by, and these are all Firebase functions here. So looks like DB imported as DB. Oh, that's actually needs to be imported on another line here, because that is actually from our Firebase file. So just like we do on our auth, so we'll say from, then we need to go and find Firebase folder. So let's have a look. Go ahead and refresh. Know what's going on there. So refresh, and everything is looking good here. Now remember, this is still hard coded, so let's just go ahead and pass that down. And we actually kind of want to loop through this here, so we're going to use a map function there, so we can like map through all of our data and render it on the screen. So I'm going to do that right here. So what we're going to say is open up our curly brackets so we can type our JavaScript in there, and we're just going to say messages, and we actually only want to display this if our messages are actually true, if they're actually present. So what we can say is messages, and so basically this will only try and map through everything if our messages are actually full, so or actually are containing messages inside our array. So we'll say messages dot map, just like that. And then what we want to do is just map through each one. I'm just going to call it message, just like that. And then we use our parentheses there, since we actually want to render data out on the screen. And what we're going to render out is just our message component, just like that. So we can go ahead and delete that one there. And as you can see, it actually has I'm learning React, but I'm going to give this a couple things here. So I'm going to say key, and React whenever you map through things, React wants to have a key. So what we can say is just message.id, and then also I'm going to pass through all of our message data there, so we can access it inside of our message component. So just passing down properties in React's all that is. So I'm going to go ahead and save that so it gets nice and formatted. And as you can see, it says I'm learning React right there. Now let's go ahead and just change this just to make sure here. So we change this, or better yet, let's just go add another one here. So I'm going to add another document, a random string there. So this one's going to be text, and let's say I'm learning Firebase. Go. We'll add our timestamp. Remember, this is a timestamp there. So our date again. There we go. Let's go ahead and save. Now let's go back on our application. Now you can see it's rendering out. It says I'm learning React. That's not right. So I'm learning Firebase. So let's go have a look at what's going on here. So let's go into our messages here. And what we're going to do, we're going to take these in here. So we'll just say a message, just like that. And instead of Dave, I'm learning React, let's go ahead and get rid of that. We'll say message.text. So if you just say message, it's just going to think you're passing through an object, and that's going to give you an error. So what we need actually is access to the text. So that's message.text. And where I'm getting that text from is just that field right there. So now it's actually pulling from Firebase in real time. So I'm learning React, I'm learning Firebase, really, really awesome. So I'm gonna leave the name hard-coded in there because we don't actually have that value stored in there yet. So you guys, that's all we need to do to actually read data from Firebase. But now, hey, we probably need to add a form so we can actually add messages to our chat application. So let's go ahead and do that right now, you guys. So let's go ahead and add our send message component down here. And this is just what it's going to look like, just a little thing down there. And then we'll come back and kind of do our styles here for who sent and received the message. And I'll show you how we're going to lay that out as well. So I'm going to open up my sidebar here. Then inside of our components folder, I'm going to create a new component, and I'm just going to call this send message.jsx. Okay. So RFC is going to get our functional component. Now inside of our message, we're going to put this inside of our chat here. So let's go ahead and put in here, send message. So let's say send message. There we go. And we're going to need to import this. So let's import send message. Go. Perfect. There's our little component there. So inside, let's go ahead and close our message down. We'll come back to that here in a moment. So inside of our send message, we're going to position this. So let's go ahead and kind of style out our form here. So we're going to say form, then let's give this a class name, and this is going to be style.form. Okay. And inside here, we're going to have an input, and it's going to be a type of text. We don't need that name and ID, but let's give this a placeholder that says message, just like that. And let's go ahead and give this class name, and it can be style.input. Now below our input, we're going to want to have a button type of submit, just like that. And we'll just say send, just like that. Okay. So, and let's give this button a class name of style. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our styles up here. So I'm going to say const style. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and paste in my styling just like I have been. Okay, so for the form, remember, let's say form from form. And then remember, we have to use our backticks. So I'm going to paste that in there. Then remember, we have to add a comma as well. And I'm going to add in our input here. So input, our backticks, there we go. And then for our last one, it's just going to be the button here. Add in our other comma. It's going to say button. So as you can see, we now have our container down here, our little form. So, and this is why we positioned everything as relative, because we position this one here as absolute. So it kind of stays at the bottom of the screen, no matter where our console is or anything like that. So everything is looking good, you guys. What we want to do next is probably be able to actually update or send a message to our Firestore database. That way it gets rendered out on the screen through our use effect whenever there's a change in our database. So let's go ahead and do that right now. And we're going to do that just up here inside of our send message component here, our functional component. So what we need to have is actually some state value for our input box here. Okay, so let's go ahead and say const, and you can call this whatever you want. I'm going to say input, set input, and let's just equal this to use state, and by default it's just going to be an empty string. So yeah, we need to update. So we'll say import use state, just like that. Okay, now how do we get the state or get the value from our form here, from our input? So we're going to do that down here inside of our input element here. So what we want to have is a value. I'm going to set the value to input, right? And this is our value right there. Okay. Now, what we need to add in here is a, don't worry about that there. What we need to add is an on change in here. So we're going to have an on change, and inside here, and pass through an event. And what we're going to do is just set input here to event.target.value, just like that. So go ahead and save. Just take care of any of those errors there. Perfect. Now, whatever we type in here, it's going to be an on change. It's going to store this whenever we send this, submit our form. We're going to add an on submit. That is going to update our state with the actual input that's inside of our input field there. Sorry if that's kind of confusing. Maybe I should have named it something else. But anyways, let's go ahead and let's go ahead and add our function here to actually send the message. Okay. So what I'm going to add is actually just an on submit here for our form. So I'm going to say on submit. Then whenever we submit this, we're going to run our send message. So let's go ahead and make our send message function here. So we'll say const send message. Okay. And this is going to be an asynchronous function here. So we'll say async, just like that. There we go. Not passing anything in. Actually, we are going to need to pass something in, so we don't have this. We don't have our page reload whenever we hit submit the form. And so all we're going to say is just event.prevent, just like that. Okay. Now next, what we're going to have here. So let's say we're going to destructure a few things here, so a little bit easier to use. So I'm going to say cons, and we actually need to import a few things before we do that. So let's just go ahead and import up here. So import, we're going to need auth, and we're also going to need the DB. So we actually pass these in because these are the only two that we're pulling from our Firebase file. So look for base, just like that. Perfect. So now we have those. We're going to go back down here, and what we're going to say here, we're going to destructure a few things here. So I'm just going to say const, and what we need is the user ID, then also the display name. So why we're getting the user ID? So each we're going to tie a user ID to each message sent, and if the user ID of that specific message that is sent, if it matches the user ID of the one that's logged in, then it's going to remain on the right side of the screen, and if it doesn't match, it's going to stay on the left side of the screen. So that's how we're going to define which side of the screen we want our messages to stay on. So what we'll say here, what we're going to have here is sorry, use some curly brackets. The UID is going to be our user ID, and this is this is stored in our Firebase auth in here. So in fact, if you look at user ID, you'll find it right there. That is our actual user ID. So that's where we're actually getting it from, in case you're wondering. So, and we're also going to need the display name if we want to display our name up there. And we'll equal this to auth current user. And where we're getting this auth is everything you see down here. And then current user is actually, so if we just console.log auth, it'll have a whole lot more information than this. And this is actually just kind of like a sub object in here inside of our auth. So this is what you see in here. This is our current user data in here. So if that gets kind of confusing, you can actually console.log it and see all of the information for yourself. So asynchronous function here. Now, after we have this defined here, what we want to say is await. We'll say add doc here, and then we're adding the collection, and we're looking for a database. And here we're going to create a database called messages. So even if you don't have a database, this is why I said earlier that you if you do it out of order, it wouldn't really work here. So this is going to work regardless if a database is created or not. So we'll say messages. Then what we want to do is just add in our fields. So our text here is going to be input, which is just our state right there. Next, our name. Our name is going to be the display name that we're passing in there. And make sure you separate these with commas, you guys. Now, next, we're also going to need the UID. And then we're also going to want the timestamp. We're going to set that to server timestamp, just like that. Perfect. So let's go ahead, and we need to import these things, and we'll go ahead and give it a shot after that. So let's import, and this is going to be from Firebase /DB, just like that. Oops, sorry, not DB, Firestore. So what do we need to import? We need the add doc, and again, these are just Firebase methods that they have provided for us. Go, and the server timestamp. Oh, just misspelled that. Perfect. All right, so did I not do this? Add doc. There we go. Okay. So let's go ahead and see if we can submit a message. So in there, we actually have two messages, because remember, we're actually pulling this in real time. And in fact, if we go to our Firebase, we can see we just have two documents in there. So let's go ahead and create another document. So it's like, hey, and there you have it, you guys. How awesome is that? Now, a couple things here. Whenever we submitted our form didn't clear off, and that's kind of annoying. And also, if it's an empty form, you can see it also still sends an empty form there, and we don't want either of those things. So what we're going to do here is just under this prevent default, we're going to add just a little if check, which basically says if the form is empty, then we're going to trigger an alert. So we'll say if input is equal to an empty string, we'll just trigger an alert here that says, please enter a valid message. Okay. Then after this, that should prevent that. So we try and submit our empty string. You can see we now have a pop-up that says, please enter a valid message. Okay. Ooh, but it still enters a message. So that is because it kind of, just as we set an if check, it kind of still proceeds with the rest of the code. So what we need to do is actually just say return, just like that. And now, once it hits this return, it just exits the code and does not proceed any further. So now we have that, but we do need to do is kind of add in a clear out our message after we're done. So just out here, outside of this await function here, what we can say is just set input, and we'll just set input back to an empty string. So say I learned Tailwind 2, just like that. So let's go ahead and press enter. Boom. So this is what I'm seeing here. It's not scrolling down to the bottom. So we actually need to add that. So let's go ahead and do that right now. We'll set that right below our input here. So we'll say scroll. And remember, you guys, this is from our use ref earlier in the video here. So we'll say scroll.current.scroll into view, just like that. And we'll just say behavior. And we're going to set this to smooth. You guys, I just finished the video and realized that my mic stopped working. So I'm trying to pick up where I left off. Don't worry, I got it right. We didn't finish. I'm not going to skip anything. So we just updated this behavior to smooth. That way, whenever we type another message, our chat application scrolls to the bottom. So there is a couple things we need to do here. So we just added that in there. But what we need to do is actually pass in this scroll, which I already did. So what you should do, the send message is going to be blank for you guys. So what you need to do is pass in scroll, just like so. Now let's go back to our chat component, and we need to make sure we're actually passing that down. So this is our ref right here that we're setting in that span. And then we initialize it up here. There it is right there for our use ref. So what we need to say here is just scroll, just like that, to pass everything down. Perfect. There we go. Now, also this name here, we actually need to, it's still hard coded, so we actually need to update that. Then also what we need to do is change, so it's actually set to fixed. We actually need that to be absolute, so there's no, so it responds properly here. So instead of saying Dave, let's go ahead and just replace that with message.name. And now instead of Dave, you should see my name, Clint Bradley. There we go. Now there is one last thing to do, and that is to display these on the right side of the screen or the left side of the screen, depending on the user ID. Because remember, we're attaching the user ID to the message that is sent. And then what we're going to do right now, actually in the message component right here, is actually check to see if the message ID of the message is actually the same as the user that's logged in. And if it is, it's going to display on the right side of the screen. And if it's not, it's going to display on the left side. So let's go ahead and do that right now. We're going to do that inside of our message component here. It's going to be inside of our functional component. So what we're going to say here, I'm going to say const message class, because we're going to be setting the class of this, right? And then what we're going to say here is we're just going to use ternary operator. And what we're going to say, if message.uid, and this is referring to the user ID stored on our Firebase backend that we created whenever we're adding a new message. If it is equal to auth.current user.uid, and remember this, we saw this down here, that we can check to see our current user ID right here. So, and this is just a ternary operator, right? So if that is true, what we actually want to do, we're going to set here a template literal to style sent. Else it's not true, we're going to set one to style received. Okay, and since we're accessing the current auth of the current user, what we need to do is actually import this, and that'll take care of that error that you see on the side of the screen. So from, and we'll just say, again, this is from our Firebase file. So let's go ahead and save. And again, we actually need to pass this in right here. So this is going to be kind of cool, you guys. So what we need to do here, okay, so let's just get rid of this here. What we're going to say, let's get rid of that and just add some curly brackets here. So we're going to use a template literal in here, okay? So we're going to use our backticks. And the first one we're going to use is style.message, because these are the styles. This message is going to, or this style is going to be, is going to work on all messages here. And then what we also want to pass in is if either the left or the right here. So what we're going to say here is message class, okay? And it's going to do our logic here and display the correct one. So as you can see here on the right side of the screen, and what I did earlier, you guys, I just deleted this here, so you can delete the whole collection. And this just to show you guys kind of like we did in the use effect, how I said it'd be out of order if you didn't follow it this way. So basically right now we have a database here, but we don't have any collections, and that's okay, because once we submit a new message, it's actually going to create a collection for us. So as we can see, we can say I'm learning React, just like that. And as you see, it pops up on the right side of the screen. Now let's just double check this thing to make sure everything is working properly. So I'm going to sign in on just another browser here and another Gmail account. So localhost 3001 is what we're actually on here. Ooh, so we're running into an issue here, and let me show you why that is. So I'm going to move this over a little bit. So inside of our app.js, so what we need to do, down here we're displaying this chat app, and it's accessing our auth and all this other stuff. And if we're not actually logged in, then we're actually seeing some errors right here. And if you pull open the console, you'll actually see what those errors are. So what we want to do in here is we'll just use a simple ternary operator to check for the user. And if it is logged in, then we're going to display our chat component. Else, it's just going to be null. We're not going to display anything. So let's just get rid of that. And that should take care of all the errors there. Perfect. All right. So what we can do now, let's go ahead and sign in. This is just another Google account of mine. Boom, I'm signed in here, and it's displaying on the left-hand side. Both the names, they're same name on both files, or on both accounts, so that's why you're not seeing anything. So let's say I'm learning Firebase V9, and it should be on the right-hand side. And over here, it's on the left. So I hope you liked the video, you guys. Smash the like button if you feel like you got some value out of this. I'd appreciate it. And also consider subscribing to the channel. I'm going to be putting out some more React content and some more Firebase content here as well. So thanks for watching, you guys. Smash the like button. I'll see you on the next one.